Welcome back everybody. Thanks for joining us. At the end of the last video we managed to finish up these gate posts with the electric lighting and also made a start on this side paving, also with some small uplights. So in today's video we're going to be making a composite gate for these posts. The first step was to draw up a design on the computer. The hinges and the gate latches themselves I already had. I bought those in the UK about 2 years ago, ready for this project. So here I did a quick layout of the composite boards with the hinges. Using the composite material means that I don't have to worry about varnishing or the wood rotting. The composite material is made up of 49% recycled wood mixed with resin. It's very dense, so I need large hinges to take the weight. Here's a quick close-up of the detail area that I'll put into the top of the gate. This is called the Tree of Life and is made from steel. It's about 30 centimeters diameter. The back of the gate will have a typical frame structure. And once that was done with the dimensions, I was able to start a cut list for the material. So, getting started on construction, the first thing was to mark out sizes and then actually set up a stop block and start cutting pieces to the correct lengths. So while you watch me do that, I thought I'd take a moment just to explain why it's taken so long for me to put out another video. I've realized that quite a lot of my previous videos, I kind of start a project and then because it takes so long, basically I only get halfway through in one video. So this time the video is a little bit longer, but I wanted to go right through from beginning to end of the construction of this gate and installation. So to join these pieces together, basically I'm going to be using dowels and a waterproof wood glue because obviously it's going to be outside. You may notice that the wood itself is actually quite thin, so I'll be doubling up on these layers. I used a self-centering dowel jig to align the holes. Here you just see me putting the first layer together, again as I said with some wood glue and then some clamps. I'll talk a bit more in the future about the dowel jig that I bought initially, the pros and the cons, possibly in the next video. I'm going to jump forward a little bit here, setting up for the second layer. Time for some glue. And the holes that you see, I was concerned that because this is a composite board, the glue doesn't seem to soak in very well to the surface. So I'm going to reinforce this with some stainless steel screws just to make sure that it's nice and tight and strong enough basically. Once this was all dry and I'd taken the glue off, it was then time to flip it over and start drilling the holes for the actual face boards. The first step was to lay out the boards and mark them so that I knew that they would go back in the right place. My concern was that because the top here is quite open with that Tree of Life decoration, that I would probably be better off actually joining these boards together edge on, just to reinforce that top section. Otherwise they may not lay completely flat and obviously could move around every time you open and close the gate. Next up it was time to mark out the position of this decoration so that I could make sure that it had enough space top and bottom. Okay, time to start joining some of these boards together, edge on. Again, I'm using that self-centering dowel jig, which is better on longer pieces like this, but on the ends of boards it's pretty much useless. Once all the holes had been drilled, it was time to start joining them together. As I said before, I'm using Tide Bond 3, which is suitable for outdoors. It's a waterproof glue, which is great. I also have to be careful not to put too much glue on the dowels, or they can what's known as hydrolock, which means that the glue has nowhere to actually go when you try and force the boards together, and they'll never ever go together properly. So you just need to put a little touch and give them a good spin, and they'll seat properly. I started off by joining the boards in sets of 2 so that I would be able to actually move them around the workshop, and obviously be able to get a better fit on each set rather than trying to deal with 10 boards at one time. And for the final glue up, I was able to put all of the boards then together and clamp them nice and tight. And here it is, all glued up. This was the first time that I'd used a router bit on this composite board, so I was a bit worried about the front surface being a bit broken up. So I made up this board with a spike for the center point, so that once it started to cut through, we wouldn't get any blowout on that front surface. Once I'd actually been able to go deep enough, I was able to remove this outer piece of wood. I still, of course, had the center hole, so I could check the depth and do any adjustments that I needed to it before continuing. Once I'd actually cut deep enough through the composite board, I was then able to completely remove the wooden former and go directly on the surface. Because these boards were actually a little bit proud of the side of the frame structure on the back, I was then able to use a flush trim router bit to just take off the excess. Using the router, I was then able to cut the semicircular top to the door. This composite material is actually quite soft. You won't get splinters from it, but you do need to pre-drill if you're using any screws. And now it's time to work on the decoration. To hold this metal tree of life decoration in place, I decided to make up a ring, like a locking ring, that I can attach to the back. I don't want to attach it permanently, just in case I want to change it or something goes wrong, then I can always remove it at a later date. Once the inner ring was cut, it was time to start marking out and cutting the outer ring. I also needed to allow some lugs to actually hold the ring to the main gate itself. And into the final stretch here, attaching the hardware. So these hinges are held on basically with an enormous carriage bolt as the main fastening, and then 2 or 3 heavy-duty screws. So the carriage bolt holes need to be quite a bit wider, and they have a bolt on the back, which of course I need to countersink below the surface so it doesn't stick out. Once I got the position right, I was able to drill these holes to accept the screws. As I said earlier, I needed to countersink the bolt heads below the surface on the back here. So here I'm just using a Forstner bit, which is basically a large drill bit, just to make a hole deep enough to accept the bolt head. And the hinges are finally fitted. They're a little bit more difficult than I expected, but this wasn't too much of a problem. Just glad it's done. And onto the gate latch itself. This was simply a case of marking out the main hole that runs through the gate itself, and the screw holes of course on both sides, and just fitting it. The latch arm that locks into the post itself to hold the gate in place was a little bit long, so I just used a hacksaw basically to cut this down, and a file just to clean it up. All done. And just a final shot of the gate all put together from the front. You'll notice that I've put the decoration tree of life in the top there, and you can see on the back here the ring that I made up to hold it in place. Moving on to something else now. What I'm making up here is a structure to actually screw the gate to. This will be, of course, attached to the concrete post itself. Here's Dash just coming for a quick snack. He rarely comes in here because he really doesn't like the sound of the machines. Drives him a bit crazy. Again, I'm using the composite material just to bond two pieces together basically, and I'll reinforce this with screws and then attach it to the concrete post. If you're enjoying this, please do all the usual stuff at the bottom with a bell and a thumbs up and that stuff. Only if you want to, of course, no worries. stepping outside now, you can actually see where this post will go. Just marking out basically the position. It's quite important, as the attachment bolts that will go in here shouldn't really go into the mortar between the blocks themselves. It should go into the concrete, solid part of the concrete. Next up, it's just time to drill the holes, and I'm putting a little layer of sealant on the back of here, just because I don't want water to particularly sit behind this bar and the concrete itself, where it will just discolour the concrete. And of course, just a final sanding. I plugged the holes, and it's ready to have the hinges attached. Now time to lift the gate in place. It's extremely heavy, as I've said before. This material is very, very dense. So I had to put a strap on it to actually get it to this location. I'm just lining it up, ready for the hinge placement. Just lining up exactly where the hinges are going to go, and then just pre-drilling with a masonry drill to make sure that the anchors are really deep and tight. And just a close-up of me putting the final anchors in, and the same for the bottom hinge. And time to actually put the gate in place. Just a couple of shots of the gate in place. It's taken about probably 6 weeks of work in the evenings after working outside. I obviously didn't show the latch being attached on the other side to hold the gate closed, but I can assure you that that's been done. Up in the next video, I've continued with the paving, and we'll be covering that in more detail. Thanks again for watching. I hope you enjoyed it. If you're interested, there are further videos up here, and I'll see you next time.